Hello, everyone. This is my July wrap up. We're somehow in August at this point. Anyway, so in July, I read 19 books for a total of 4,540 pages. There were 14 volumes of manga, 3 KU ebooks, and 2 paperbacks. And I got them from Kindle Unlimited, obviously, and then for the ebooks. And then for the others, it was a combination of Barnes & Noble, Kinokuniya, and Pango. The first things I read were the final 3 volumes of Haikyuu. These were the final 3 volumes of the manga, and they were like everything I wanted them to be. As I was reading, I kept thinking about like how I wanted things to end, and like, oh, like I wonder if Furudate will end it this way, and like he would do that and then keep going and like adding more things. Cecil. So our water fountain for the cats is under like a sideboard credenza, and Cess will like put his paw under the water. That's too close. So yeah, he'll stick his paw like under the, like, because there's like a basin, and then there's like a waterfall part, and he'll stick his paw under the waterfall part and just like put it, through the water. Isn't that right? Isn't that right, buddy? Yeah. I pretty much got a satisfying ending multiple times. I don't really want to say too much about how it ends, because like I know I got spoiled for parts of it, and I was just like, I didn't really want that. Like I was enjoying it enough to where I was like, I don't want to know anything about how it ends. I just want to like enjoy the ride. So I won't say like too much about how it ends, just that it's like really satisfying. I will say, if you want spoilers, go watch some of the Olympics coverage for the men's volleyball. Like the overall representation of Haikyuu at the Olympics has been so fun to see, and it's just a testament to how loved the series is, like not just by like readers, but by big time athletes as well. I know a while ago Eric Shoji from the US team did a video on some of the things the characters were doing in the anime, and like this was a couple years ago, but like even during the Olympics I've seen clips of like, oh, I like this character best. And I think a German player was talking about one of his favorite players, and then I think there was a picture of some of the players from the Argentina team who had like a picture with like a plushie of one of the players, and then there were cosplayers in the audience of one of the Japan games during the Olympics, and then I saw pictures of like people who had a band, like banners from a couple of the schools in the manga, and then they played like the opening and closing songs during some of like the breaks from the play, like gameplay. So yeah, so it's been really fun to see just like how universally loved this series is. I think I'll continue wishing I had more time with these characters, but only because I love them so much, not for any like lack of closure. There were like no unanswered questions. It was just a lot of fun as like the ending to a manga. 8,000 out of 10. The next thing that I read were volumes 4 through 12 of Witch Hat Atelier, and I'll show the individual covers because they are just beautiful. I don't need to be like lurking in the background. That's not what you're here for, probably. I mean, I guess I could be a lurker on the threshold. Name that reference. It's only an entertaining reference for my husband. Um, yeah, so I am caught up to the current volume, which is number 12. I think 13 comes out sometime this year. Maybe not. I don't know. I have to double check on that. It's still really cute and endearing, but there are some aspects that are getting like so incredibly dark. The villains are really insidious. The dilemmas that a lot of these kids face are like huge questions on morality, and the impacts that the policies put in place by like the ruling witches, or like the head council of the witches, like those policies, the impacts those policies have on our young characters are going to have really far reaching implications. There are a lot of majorly gray areas in the manga. For example, one of the tenets of witches is that they can't study medicine because they aren't allowed to perform any spells directly on the body. The reasons behind that get challenged really quickly after certain events are put in motion by like the bad guys. So in Witch Hat, the witches, they have caps with like like no brim on them, and the bad guys are called the brimmed caps because they used to be the witches like in charge of things, and they would do a lot of really questionable things, and these are like the main like villains throughout the story, is like anyone with a brim on their witch's hat is kind of from like the old guard of which kind, I guess. I don't know. They put things in motion to kind of try and force the hands of these young witches and get them to like turn back to like the old ways. And then you see characters from like the good guys side, and you're like, "Oh yeah, you I understand." And like there's a another thing that's going on is that there's a really big restriction on who has access to knowledge about magic. You meet some of these characters that are on supposedly on the side of like the good guys, and you're like, yeah, you are really creepy, and you do not need this kind of information to like enhance your creepiness. So it's like you get why regulations are in place for people like that, but then you see the benefits of like magic worked on the body, like in the hands of the right people, like in the hands of actual doctors who are not creepy. It's just a mess. And then there's like for some people there is like black and white, like how magic is used, and there's a lot of questions and like intersections of like how do you use magic to benefit the people. Part of what is getting really dark is that I think we're at the point where the kids are going to have to face the fact that magic can't fix everything. And I think it's going to happen in a super heartbreaking way. It hasn't happened yet, but I can feel it coming, and I'm already like kind of upset about it. And it's one of those stories where I don't know if the mangaka is going to pull any punches, because I don't know that they really have so far. The main characters are all children. I don't know how it's going to go. Like could go really sideways, but there are some aspects of this that are like would be labeled like cozy or whimsical or like coming of age or that sort of thing, where you would expect it to stay a little more on the kinder side. But I don't know. I don't know. I feel it coming, and I don't know that I like it. Like I said, I don't know when volume 13 is coming out, but I am really excited for it. Like volume 12 ended kind of in not really a cliffhanger, but like in the middle of some action, and I'm just kind of like I just want to know. That was the next big chunk of books that I read in July. The first KU book that I read is called Forged by Magic. I think it's the first in a KU series. It's supposedly cozy, but kind of had some higher stakes. It was fine. Like it wasn't like terrible, but it was very middle of the road for me. It follows an orc. I think she might be a half orc who lands on an island. Like she's been sent by. So there's an emperor who has slowly taken over most of the lands, and he's like hunted a lot of races down and like forced them into submission, and just an overall bad dude. He basically keeps her in a tower and like forces her to go on missions for him, and he sends her to an island in order to like find this race of people. And I don't know. It was long enough ago that I'm kind of fuzzy on some of the details. So she gets sent on this mission and gets swept overboard, and she lands on an island, and she basically has to make a deal with this surly blacksmith to help him win a challenge to get an item that will like grant a wish. So there's like sabotage, trials, feelings. I'm fairly uninspired to continue the series. There's nothing wrong with like the writing style, but some of the plot and like character things didn't like connect for me. And like I looked up some of the like continuations of the series. So these are, I think, interconnected standalones, and they're fine. I don't even know that I can say that it like scratched an itch, but I mean, like kind of did. But like one of those where I'm like, this was fine, but none of the premises of the future installments sounded interesting to me. So I don't know that I would continue with the series. I would be willing to try something by the author again, but I don't know if I would even be too inclined to do that. So the first paperback, like regular novel that I read was A Broken Blade. I actually let my sister borrow it, have it. I don't know. If she gives it back, great. It's probably going to the used bookstore. If she doesn't give it back, then I'm not too worried about it. Because I, again, will not be continuing with the series. I think this is called the Halfling Saga or the Halfling Trilogy or something like that. It's by Melissa Blair. If I am remembering correctly, I think she's Anishinaabe. I know she's Native American of some kind, so I hope I'm getting that correct. Yeah, like I thought that was like really cool to have a Native American voice in fantasy. It's not Native American inspired fantasy, but neither here nor there. Damien and I went to the bookstore the day before a beach trip with my family, and it was one of the buy one get one half off books, and I'd heard about it several times, so I figured I would use the opportunity to get it and check it out. We follow the King's Blade, who is supposed to go around eliminating threats to the King's rule. He has decreed that elves are not allowed to exist, and that all halflings, like which are human elf hybrids, are property of the king. And any halfling found not working for the king is clearly working against him in his mind and is eliminated. She's been doing this for like 60 years or something. That might be her age. I think she has been doing this for 60 years, though, and has basically been drinking herself into a stupor so she doesn't have to face the fact that she is killing her own kind. So that was kind of cool representation to see. A new threat emerges called the Shadow, who is definitely working against the king, and she is forced to try to hunt him down. I liked several things about the book. The fact that she's an alcoholic, And she also self-harms, which is representation that you don't necessarily see very often, especially in fantasy. Maybe more in fantasy than other genres. I don't know. I still feel like it's pretty rare. Maybe more in like epic fantasy. And it's like handled in a realistic manner, how she got there and how she gets herself out, like gets herself sober. She's a bit lost in her purpose and like how to function, and really good at keeping people at arm's length, but you slowly see her like expanding her circle. And there's also a school of female assassins that I really enjoyed. Things that I didn't love is a longer list. The explanation for the races was kind of convoluted, and I'm still not totally sure how they all fit together. So there were humans, there were halflings, there were elves, and then there were light and dark fae. The light fae have been gone or missing or like left the continent. The dark fae are like isolated in like one corner of the continent. The elves, which I don't know if they are a blend of the light and dark fae or if they are like some I don't really know exactly how the elves tie in, but they are some sort of like fae adjacent, like immortal something or other. They have been hunted like almost to extermination by the king. And then halflings are any sort of human hybrid. But then they talk about like the dark fae, the last female dark fae died supposedly. So like there's no longer going to be any more popping out. Humans can't like they can I think that they can sleep together, but they don't produce baby, like they don't have offspring. I don't know. It was kind of it was not explained to my satisfaction. So I didn't love that. I didn't love the tropiness. The romance was fine. The way it developed throughout the book made sense. I am tired of the thing where I don't know if it's a trope. I don't know if it's like a plot point. Whatever you want to call it. But where they get together in the first book, and then some secret that he was keeping from her gets revealed that turns their relationship on its head, and she just has to deal with it. Like that just it makes me so mad at the end of the book, and you see it coming, and I'm like, most of the plot points make sense, but there's a couple things where you like went all the way over here and then like came back and talked to the king just to go back like over elsewhere, when it's like you could have just not. So there were a couple of things where I was like, I don't know that this trip was necessary, but like the interaction kind of was. So I don't know. There's that saying where like the unique and good, where the parts that are unique aren't good and the parts that are good aren't unique. And it's not, hi, what? Was it so? Mm-hmm. What are you doing? Cecil. Oh my gosh. Hi. What are you doing, Cecil? Yeah, so it's not bad. It's just not great. And the author even says that this is her interpretation of a mashup of TikTok's favorite tropes. So, go into it knowing that, and I think you'll have a good time. And like I read that before. I did know that going into it. I can't remember if there's like a note in the front or if it's just the like trigger warnings about alcoholism and self-harm that were in the front. You do get the first chapter of the next book as like a preview in the back of the first book. And I did read that and was like, yeah, all right. I was pretty satisfied to end where I did. I am fairly uninspired to continue. I might look up spoilers. It's one of those where, like, I want to know what happens, but I don't want to invest my time in figuring out, like, actually reading through everything that happens, like, in, like, a full-length novel. Like, if you gave me the Spark Notes version, I would be totally fine. There are some parts where I'm like, okay, like, I can see that there's, like, you're laying the groundwork for this to be some sort of mystery, like her origin story, because she doesn't really remember her childhood. She just remembers, like, after she was found and, like, being sent to the assassin school. And she just remembers everything after that, so she doesn't remember anything before that. Groundwork has been laid for future mysteries throughout the series. I kind of want to know, like, where those go, but I'm not necessarily, like, crazy invested in any of the characters to be like, yeah, I gotta know what happens in, like, a full-length novel form. The next book that I picked up was Demon's Guide to Wooing a Witch. This was a much more enjoyable read. At the end of A Broken Blade, I had like 80 pages left, and I just dragged them out over like 3 days. And then finally I just was like, okay, I just got to get it done, and just sat down and, like, sprinted through it. But yeah, so this was the follow-up and much more enjoyable. This is the second book in the Glimmer Falls series and follows Caladia Cunnington, who is, like, the best friend from the first book, and then Astaroth, who is the demon from the first book. Like, the demon antagonist. Yeah. He is sent to the human world after a bet goes sideways and loses his memories and immortality in the process. Caladia finds him and goes to help him, but then doesn't want to deal with him when she recognizes him. So once she realizes that he's lost his memories, she does reluctantly end up helping him. However, she gets caught in the crossfire when his enemy from the Demon Council that sent him off to the human world tracks him down at her house. They go on the run, adventure, and feelings ensue. It was a really fun time. I don't know that these are, like, up there with like my most favorite of favorites, but I always have a good time. I do think I like this one a little bit better than the first one. I have already pre-ordered the third book, which I think is out in like 2 weeks. Week and a half. It's Friday, so week and a half maybe. I'm considering the Fairy Loot set, but might not since I already have all 3 books. And these first 2 books do deal with, like, toxic parent relations, specifically mothers and daughters, but also an absentee father in the second book. I can't remember the father-daughter relationship in the first one. I think it existed, but he was, like, not having a good time either. And I think he was more supportive in the first one, is if I'm remembering correctly. But yeah, they're just, like, really fun romps, and I didn't have a bad time. The next 2 books and final 2 manga I read are Night of the Living Cat volumes 2 and 3. These kind of concluded the how we got here, like, intro arc, and we see how our main characters got to where they are now, like how they're living, and sort of started to see some of the current timeline. I still think it's funny seeing how these people who can't resist cats, like, get turned into cats, and, like, just the sheer willpower that they're forced to have by, like, oh, he's so cute, but I can't let him touch me. I think there's still a mystery left to be uncovered about a main character. It's pretty goofy overall. Definitely post-apocalyptic vibes. But yeah, this is the cover of the first one, or the volume 2, and then the cover of the third one. And then the final two final two KU books I read are Mile High and The Right Move, which are both by Liz Tomford. Mile High is a hockey romance where there's a Playboy hockey player named Xanders who flirts with the new flight attendant. Her name's Stevie. And when she doesn't really flirt back, he decides to like make her life miserable. I wasn't really sold on the premise because I'm not a huge fan of him starting off treating her like a dick, but it was a really mild version of that, like just asking her to get things for him all the time, like even when he didn't like truly need something. It went away pretty quickly, and it was more just like he's gonna pester her while on her job, and like, but not in like any other sort of meaningful way. Like it's not a bully romance, which I don't like. I don't necessarily know that it was like totally my favorite hockey romance, but it was good. I had a fun time. Had some representation that you don't normally get in hockey romances. I think both main characters were mixed race. And then the female main character's body weight fluctuated a lot, so there was a big emphasis on like how she felt about herself like day to day and like body image issues and that sort of thing. It was like a higher end of middle of the road for me, and I liked the main couple coming up in the second book, so I went ahead and picked that up as my like final book of July. The Right Move follows Stevie's brother Ryan, who is an NBA player, and her best friend Indy, who was also a flight attendant from book one. She moves in with him, and he claims that they're dating when the general manager for his basketball team says that he doesn't think that Ryan, who has just been voted captain, the GM doesn't think that Ryan is captain material because he has no work-life balance. I liked it better than the first one. I don't know if it was like a new favorite or anything, but it was a nice, easy read during a work trip. I have picked up the third in this series. I think there's 4 out so far. I don't know if there's going to be any more, but there's 4. There are at least 3 out. I didn't think the 4th one was out yet, but it could have come out since the last time I checked. I'm liking the 3rd one a lot, but that is going to be an August read. Yeah, that's it for my July 2024 wrap-up video. Somehow we've made it over halfway through the year. Not sure how we have done that, but hope everyone had a good reading month and has a good final month of summer. Sort of final. If you live in the South, it goes until like October. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.